Welcome, boys. Okay, in this video we're going to be doing some work on the Beetle. We need to replace the muffler and mostly the exhaust tips. Muffler's pretty rusty, the tips are very rusty, and when I bought this thing I got a boatload of spare parts, including a muffler. Had to buy the tips though. So, ordered some hardware, that came in. We're going to go ahead and replace that. I've already done quite a bit of work on this thing off camera, replacing fuel sending unit, the horn, air filter, stuff like that. And we got future videos coming. We're going to drop the engine, replace the clutch. We're going to replace spark plugs and wires, the crankshaft pulley with a real spiffy looking one. Remove the carburetor, clean it, replace the heat risers, fab the new ones, that sort of stuff. But in this video, just muffler replacement. First order business, we need to get these big hoses that are clamped down onto bits and pieces of the muffler at the bottom of the tin there. So we need to loosen those, and then we'll take you underneath and you can see what they're clamped onto, and then all the other hardware we're going to have to remove to get the muffler out. So relatively easy maintenance muffler removal is. So let's go underneath and see what we got going on down there. Alright, and so underneath, if you didn't have replacement or you were going to reuse your muffler, you would have to undo these clamps. I'm not going to have to because I have spare mufflers and new tips, and then those tips, you can stay with this muffler. I got new tips to go on the new muffler. We're going to have to do those clamps right there that go to the heat box, those clamps up there that bolt to the head. As you can see up on top, up there, that is where those hoses are attached. And of course, up on top, on the other side of the tin, that's where the heat risers are bolted onto the exhaust as well. So just got to undo all those things on both sides, all the clamps connecting the tailpipes if you have to, and then to the heater box, to the head, and then the heat risers. Alright, and I'm just loosening the clamps and removing the hoses, removing the tin that's covering the heat risers, and then removing the bolts that are securing the heat risers to the muffler. So pretty easy. It's 10 millimeters and flatheads. And with all the fasteners securing the tin in, I can remove the tin, get it out of the way. So you just kind of finagle it out of there. So not too much of a struggle, but it might start catching on that seal there. So you just kind of wiggle it loose, but it'll come. And with the tin removed and the heat riser bolts loosened, I now have access to the bolts that are securing the muffler to the exhaust port on the cylinder head. So might need a hammer to break them loose. They weren't too difficult to get off, but a hammer and your ratchet and you should be alright. You got enough room to work in there and loosen that stuff from the top, and then we can just go on the bottom and then get the rest of the stuff off.
Okay, there's not a lot of room, so I can't really film what all I'm doing under here, so I'm leaving everything on the car, but I'll just show you everything we're doing. It's going to be ditto for the other side. So we got the two 10 millimeters for the exhaust pipe on each side. You can hold it with a 10 wrench on the top. Use your 10 mil socket to take loose. Ditto for right here, where the muffler bolts to our heater piping. You can use a Phillips to take this clamp loose, and then where the exhaust bolts to the head, those are 13 mils. The same on the other side that I'm laying on. So this should be pretty easy. I've lubed it up, but none of this is really on very tight. So I'm going to go ahead and back everything out, and then once I pull this exhaust off out of here, take the other 10 millimeter bolts off the heat riser from above. That'll be the last thing I think I take loose. I might take those. I think the last thing might just be the head. I'll like loosen the ones from the head. That'll be the last thing I take off, probably all the way. And then we'll get her done. So, alright. Sorry I can't film under here, but there's not a lot of room. But you get the idea what I'm doing. Okay, that side. It'll come out. What about this side? Well, that looks like it should too. Okay.
Alright boys, it's as easy as that. Of course, installation is going to be reverse of removal, and I have new hardware, so I'm just going to put my new tips on, get her in there, and then we'll cut back and show you the finished result. So, a little while for me, a couple seconds for you. Okay boys, and this is the final result. Didn't film the installation procedure, but it is the reverse of removal. Nothing too out of the ordinary or crazy. As you can see, we got these nice new exhaust tips on with new hardware. So it's just a matter of clamping your hardware down. Ditto for right here. And we do need to readjust this clamp, because it takes a little bit of finagling after you get everything else lined up here. Then what you're going to want to do is angle these and then get your sleeves on there. But it's a moot point. I'll have to readjust that. But next video on this will be removing the heat risers and replacing them, so I do have to drop the engine out of this car. So next video will be engine removal. But that's because we have clogged heat risers here, so this carburetor gets awfully cold. We need to replace this part, but to do that we're going to have to drop the engine, so it'll be a little bit easier to access and take apart. I won't have to remove as much stuff if I was to just leave it in the vehicle. Or at least that's the idea. I don't know. Maybe it's easier if I just disassemble everything, but I don't think it is. So that's the game plan. So new muffler and additional parts successful. But like I was mentioning under there, after you get it kind of bolted up where it needs to go, that's when you're going to turn and adjust those parts before you get those bands on there, because everything's got to line up perfectly to come through this tin. If you don't have those things lined up properly before you start clamping the other things down, it's not going to fit. So you want to kind of turn those things, get them where they need to be about, then clamp everything down, and then you'll come back and readjust them one final time, and then you go and then, you know, tighten those little sleeves. I guess a better visual of what I'm talking about is these things, because these move, and then this is where those clamps go. Well, these sleeves, we're going to call them. So once you get these kind of sort of whereabouts they need to be, so you're going to poke through the tin properly. Then you're going to bolt everything up, clamp it down. Then you're going to go one last adjustment so that these things are poking through exactly where they need to be for those hoses to clamp onto. And then, once we're there, then you can go ahead and clamp it from below, and then you'll be golden. And then of course your heat risers will clamp there. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and definitely get rid of these tips, but then I think I'm going to see if this is salvageable. So we're going to sandblast it, repaint it, and then once this one goes bad, if and when it does, we'll have a spare ready to throw back on it, the original one, if you will. And then that'll be that. So catch you in the next video where we do the engine drop so we can replace the heat risers so my carburetor stops freezing. So catch you then. Enjoy the rest of your evening, boys. Peace.